Hey everyone, and welcome back to another report. And oh dear, it's time to be the bearer of ill tidings again. So when we last covered this story, all was happy. Torchlight Frontiers, a free-to-play game, was, after the feedback of testers, turned into Torchlight 3, a full premium PC ARPG, and we were excited. It was a great story. The community were listened to. It was a win for premium games. Well, sadly, following the surprise release of Torchlight 3 Steam Early Access, things are decidedly mixed. The reviews have been messy, and it sort of seems like something a bit weird has went on, be it on the part of the devs or the publisher, and it's certainly something we've got to dive into. Of course, as always, be sure to like and sub. It really does help us out with the YouTube bots. I mean, you guys know what's up there. Then, of course, if you want our daily gaming news TLDR service, if you want early access to some of our videos and a bunch of loot, including the Druid class pin, then Patreon is the place to go, and truly it helps us out a bunch. And with that said, let's get stuck into the story. Well, how sad today's story is, because this is something that actually was a good story initially, and now it is something that is decidedly a good bit more mixed. So, Torchlight 3, it was featured on the PC gaming show, and then it was shadow dropped. It went live on Steam in early access for $30, and it peaked at 5.6k players, which really isn't that good, but then it quickly fell off as the servers fell apart, and the game just couldn't really handle it. Not being able to cope with less than 6,000 concurrent players, I mean, I really think that does just show that it was straight up not really that ready for release. Now, though, the servers are functional, but they're a little bit laggy. The devs found really major issues with the server. Some examples include databases with slow response times, there were servers dropping all players randomly, which is not very good, and server capacity being a small fraction of what they intended because of service errors, plus a bunch more. So, on the network side, they were not ready for this launch. There was also race conditions in their load balancing. Basically, right, what that actually means is fundamental problems they did not find in alpha testing and had to rework. Now, to be fair to the devs, they did do a great job in communicating their way past all of this, but ultimately this almost reminding me of, was it Wilson? The other, ARPG with a botched launch? And then this is botched as hell. Having 66% of reviews as negative on Steam is going to be nigh impossible to recover from without a miracle. But the thing is that not all of these reviews are because of server issues, and this is where this actually becomes an interesting story that's worthy of coverage. So, a quick recap. We covered Torchlight 3 super positively during a past developer update, and that was because the game was originally called Torchlight Frontiers. It was originally a free-to-play game that was being published by Perfect World. Now, in January, they actually announced that it was going to be massively overhauled, and instead would be a premium game called Torchlight 3, and that was after significant feedback from their alpha testers. So, there was a heartfelt developer video. Everyone was happy. Torchlight, a beloved franchise, was not going free to play. It was staying premium, and we were getting a nice big full game. But it turns out that this may have been a hollow-ish promise. I say ish because the attribution of blame here is a very interesting thing indeed. I think people who are assuming that these negative reviews are just because of server issues, well, I think they could be missing a far wider point here. There are many genuine reviews about the state of the game, and certainly when we hopped in and played a little bit of the game, it seemed pretty obvious that something was amiss. So, let's talk about the state of the game. As we know, the game was clearly rushed out in a subpar state as far as their servers were concerned. But we actually look into what's there for this $30 early access offering. Well, that's where it gets a bit more interesting. There is not an awful lot of content in it. Now, that is actually, I'd say, excusable because it is early access. It is labeled as such. However, there are free-to-play feeling mechanics like the fort that still exist. And basically, it kind of feels like a space originally designed to fill up with microtransaction cosmetics and things like that. Basically, right, you kind of feel like the old version of this game is still very much there. You know, the microtransactions and stuff don't exist, but the actual structure, basically, it feels like it's running deep in the game's DNA. There are then fundamental problems like input latency when we were playing it. I mean, I actually booted this game up when I came into the office this morning, and when I was going to click the start game button, I just noticed something. I noticed the input latency was weird, and then I just sat there for about 30 seconds twiddling the mouse around. Because yes, I mean, I'm very sensitive to input latency. I'm pretty discerning, I guess. I've been using high refresh monitors my whole life, not my whole life, like the last 6 or 7 years. And yeah, that's something I'm really noticing. Now, the thing is, though, input latency in a click based game, like an action RPG, that is not good. And that translated pretty darn bad into the play experience. Then, they actually get in, there's some more strange things, because the game's got this huge UI. It's pretty gaudy, right? It's not just like, I don't mean that nice, stylized, like stylized style, right? The Torchlight has always had. No, it's really big, really gaudy. And then you kind of look at the camera and your character, and yeah, the FOV, the field of view, is really limited. And it could be argued here that this stuff really makes it feel like it's for mobile. Now, I'm not saying it is. That's something reviewers are doubling down on, and what I will certainly say is that if you're doing a premium PC game and people are even feeling like they're saying that it feels like mobile, that's really bad. Now, there's also other issues. New systems like the Relic item and the Legendarium, they don't make up for things, right? They don't make up for the lack of stat allocation, and you only having, right? Get this, 2 skill trees with 6 abilities each. Yeah, it makes Diablo 3 look like an extremely, extremely complex game, and I mean, certainly Path of Exile then is rather hilarious in comparison. Now, in fairness, not every game in this genre has got to go for extreme depth and complexity, but certainly 2 skill trees with 6 abilities each, that ain't something that feels good, especially because you then look at Torchlight 2, and what did it have? It had full stat allocation, it had more interesting itemization, and it had 3 skill trees with 9 abilities each. That is a lot more abilities. Immediately, when you go into this game, it feels like there's a lot less depth, even if the core mechanics of the game are pretty well considered. Because when I jumped in, I just felt like, oh wow, all these game bits are wrong. But then I looked at the world and I was like, well damn, the presentation here is really nice. The art style's really, really nice. Just why does it feel so strange? What is going on here? I mean, there's elements here that, just of the game, that scream, this is designed to be notably more casual, but the game itself seems to have few of the benefits that would actually, be good for that casual enjoyment. And to really sharpen up the point of this video, it basically feels like the developers made the promise that they were going to not do Torchlight Frontiers, that they were going to do Torchlight 3. They made that promise, but maybe that was made because Frontiers would have flopped. I think we all probably know that would have happened. But it then seems like they made that promise, but did not have the time or money to actually overhaul what they had into what people would actually expect a Torchlight 3, right? A full-fledged premium PC action RPG to actually be. Now, I've got to assume that this was a decision to get some money in to continue development, but it does to me seem like a pretty darn desperate play from Perfect World. And really, I think here that maybe Perfect World, maybe they sank a good bit of money into hiring really valuable staff to build up this game, but spending years going in one direction and then only giving that team 5 to 6 months to take the game into a new direction, well, that's just not enough time to rebuild it into what would be a new solid core of a game, because, make no mistake, premium PC ARPG and more casual free-to-play are totally different games. And I mean, there's even then other things like pushing it without an offline mode into early access and then not having the servers ready. That feels like an amateur mistake, even though these are quality, experienced developers. And usually when something like that happens, well, it's because the developers were just not really in a position where they were given the tools, the resources, the time to actually make good on what they would have wanted to do. Because the one thing I think that you will find if you go talk to a lot of the developers behind games that have got big issues like this is they actually do mean well, but they're mostly just victims of circumstance and forces beyond their control, such as publisher set timelines. So really, the sad part of this report is that right now, it totally looks like they just cashed in on all of their goodwill to put this on Steam now, and the whole thing kinda broke, right? They cashed in on that goodwill, people handed the money over, and then they got a game that really was not living up to what their expectations of a premium PC ARPG actually were. And then I guess a lot of those people have probably since refunded. That's going to be a big loss for the studio. Now, using early access and this is for the fans as a shield to deflect criticism, that's not really a good thing to do. And for this, they are going to have to, they're going to have to get real with what's actually going on there, and they are going to have to commit to an extremely dedicated plan to actually getting this game into a good position. Look, this is a real solid development team of veterans in this genre. It's the pedigree of the Torchlight franchise. But here I think you see something very interesting in the state of a game and the shifting of business models just being bizarre. And you know what? Let's take a hard turn, right? I don't know if it's a left turn or a right turn, but we're going to take a hard turn. I just want to mention another game that was a real victim of circumstance like this, and that was, well, a lot of the Square Enix stuff a while ago. There was a time, right, where Square Enix were really pushing towards live services, and one of the games that was really caught up in this was actually Hitman. And that's a part of why the Hitman reboot launched in such a strange way and was carved up. Now, eventually, right, once that whole Hitman game came together, it was a really brilliant game. However, right, there were clear situations there where the business model of that game was not really working out well. And I think it was Super Bunny Hop, and I really recommend you go to his channel. He makes really interesting content in general, but it was Super Bunny Hop's video that was going into, I believe it was one of the Just Cause games that was also a game that really wasn't that good, but one of the reasons for that is because it was supposed to be a totally different, more live service-based business model, but then they sort of changed the plan pretty late in the day, and then the devs were just left scrambling, and I think that also happened a bit to Deus Ex Mankind Divided. So if you want another example of that from, I guess, a different genre, a different publisher, I'd recommend just heading on to the history of Super Bunny Hop's channel for that. Certainly, though, this is a sad situation. You know, we were so happy whenever we found out that the Torchlight 3 would be a thing, and that it would not be Torchlight Frontiers, right? A free-to-play version of it. We were really happy about that, and I think that now that things have shaken out the way that they have, it's only right for us to do a follow-up story on what actually happened following our initial reporting. So, there you go. That is what is going on there. Let me know. Are you a Torchlight fan? Are you disappointed by this? Are you playing the game? Do you have these problems with it? Or do you actually enjoy it? Do let us know. Of course, there are many other videos up on this channel. We are pumping out content pretty serious these days. So check that out. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.